to the ABC Podcast.
Always be cool.
The show where your hosts, DC and BK, showcase your local business and real estate pros going gangbusters in leadership, community involvement, and just being cool.
Here are your hosts, serial entrepreneurs, mortgage experts at Summit Lending, and partners in crime, Darren Copeland and Bobby Kerr.
All right, everybody, it's the Always Be Cool podcast, hanging out with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland.
What's up, everyone?
We're really excited today. We have famed Kansas City photographer and business owner, Mr. Brian Rice.
All right, everyone, here we go. Born and raised in Manhattan, Kansas. Graduated in 1991. Amazing year, by the way, to graduate, just to let you know.
I'm assuming that you are as well.
Exactly. Graphic design degree from Johnson County Community College. He's with the Kansas City Star from 2002 to 2015. He is a freelance multimedia guru, all-around cool person. Brian Rice, welcome to the show, man.
Right,
Thanks for
Thank
being
you,
here, bro.
Thank you. I
Welcome.
wish that multimedia guru was multimillionaire instead.
Right. Eventually, that will transition into that. Right.
So, Brian, we always kind of start the show off with some type of nice transition to kind of describe why you're here. And
Yeah, I want to know because I was like looking at your previous guest list and I'm seeing
the
George
pictures.
Brett and Willie Mays Aikens and Willie Wilson
Yeah.
and Trent Green and all these famous athletes and so forth. I'm like, oh, how do I fit into all that?
Well, I'd say you
know.
fool. You kind of are. I was kind of, it's tongue in cheek a little bit when we say like famed Kansas City
You're right.
photographer, but it's not really. I mean, you are kind of the guy, and I'll say that, you know, it doesn't matter. I've worked with a lot of photographers, you know, in the
know.
different arenas,
Yes.
right? And it doesn't matter if I'm at a concert or if it's one of my concerts or if I'm at a concert at T-Mobile, Sandstone, or if I'm at a black tie event, I'm at some corporate gala. It doesn't matter. Like, you're there. And I mean, seriously, how many times
I
have you and
remember.
I ran
Yeah.
into each
Yeah, I
other at
remember.
all those different kinds of
That
events?
Firestone building.
Oh
I
my!
remember
Like,
that time. Way
everywhere,
back.
and it's been over the last decade. So, like, how does one build up their personal brand and business to where you are that guy?
I'll tell you, it wasn't intentional, you know, because, you know, I got my degree in graphic design from JUCO. That was 2002. And then I was working at the Star during that time. And it was around 2003 that I bought my first digital camera.
Really?
And that was it. I mean, it was basically all self-taught. And I had never really, I mean, I had a camera. I had my dad's camera. He had an old manual film camera back in those days. I may still be in my place. But it really wasn't until digital that it clicked for me as a thing, because I always had trouble taking film and understanding all the lighting ratios and all that stuff. And so I'd like take it to the photomat and like, why aren't they turning out any good?
Right.
And it was a
Said
very
every
tough-
photographer ever.
yeah. But when I got my first digital camera, which was like a 4 megapixel Olympus C4000 or something like that, you could see it on the back of the camera what you just did.
Right.
And
It's a game changer.
If it's overexposed, you just adjust it, take the
Right.
shot. If it's underexposed, you could do that until you
Right.
got what you wanted. And that was a game changer. It made all the difference. And so,
And that was probably super expensive back in the day as well.
not necessarily. I don't remember exactly how much that model cost.
It wasn't cheap, though.
I mean,
Yeah.
first rolling out that type of technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It wasn't 400 or 500.
Say at
maybe.
least several
Yeah.
hundred. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, so, and that's when it took off. And as far as to your point, like, how does one build a brand? I mean, I was just going out having fun. I didn't have an agenda. That's the whole thing. Is it's just, I stumbled into it, and I was just taking photos here and there just for fun. And then, you know, I was like, and I think there was a local band called Identity Crisis. I highly doubt they're around anymore, but I knew the bass player from college, from JUCO.
Okay.
We worked because when I was going to JUCO, I also worked part-time in the computer labs as a lab monitor. And so come on out. And then I just started taking photos of them for fun. And that was that. But, and then, I kind of discovered the Zeros who had begun to pick up a big following. The Zeros being the 80s
Yep.
new wave band that, and they just celebrated their 20th anniversary.
Yep.
Wow.
A couple months ago. And, oh, God, you think they'd let me bring my camera in? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, man. And of course, yeah, sure. And then that's kind of how it started.
20 years later, yeah.
That was '06 actually.
Okay.
When I started taking photos of them, and then suddenly, just slowly but surely over the following months and then years, it was another band and they all happened to know each other. That particular circle, they all so. Then the U2 tribute, Rattle and Hum, was another band that I kind of simultaneously was taking a lot of photos of, and then it just kept evolving and expanding because I kept meeting new people that were connected to somebody who maybe they weren't connected to the Zeros, but they were connected to somebody from Rattle and Hum.
Sure.
Who Rattle and Hum was connected. Their bass player was also in an original band called Leaded, and so then so all of a sudden this like tree,
You have this huge network.
it just
Right.
it just evolved.
So it's kind of, I think Darren would probably have a couple things to say about this too, but like, it doesn't matter what type of person we have in here with the industry. Like if they're a business owner, you're a business owner. The success usually comes and stems from the fact that it has nothing to do with the type of business that you're doing. It's your relationships that you have. And it doesn't,
It's all your natural networking, right? And just like stuff that we do and all the guys that we know, it's, everyone knows someone, right?
Right.
So you're talking about all these bands that probably were maybe in high school, college bands together.
Definitely.
And they're like, hey, man, you did check out this Brian guy. He takes some pretty...
that's
right
exactly
photos.
what happened.
Yeah.
for
awesome.
sure.
And so during that time, I was still working as a graphic designer at the Star, and then eventually, I think it was Liverpool, the Beatles tribute. Hey, how much do you charge, man? I'm like,
How much you got?
$50. I had no idea, so I took photos of this show at the first paid gig. I think was Liverpool at the Voodoo Lounge in February of 2007.
Okay.
$50. That's because I didn't know, and it's like,
that's great.
So I did,
Sure.
and then over time, and then I got connected with somebody who was a wedding photographer, and I assisted him on a few weddings that summer to because that was something I wanted to do as well, to figure out the ebb and flow of how a wedding works. So
That's a different ball game.
It is, yeah. And so,
But you're still doing a lot of weddings.
I don't do
right?
as many weddings as I'd like. I mean, the biggest thing, is, the biggest thing is,
The mother of the bride?
I don't, no, I don't push it. I mean, that's, we're talking about being successful, and oh man, everything I do is word of mouth.
Yeah.
And my biggest challenge is marketing myself much more effectively than I could make a living doing what I do now, but if I was pushing it as hard as I could, it would just be crazy.
blown up.
Great, but that's kind of my internal challenge, always like, how can I do this? How can I market? And but I have so much stuff that just like the weddings is normally word of mouth or somebody's kid. Same thing with senior photos. It's, the musicians, I just did Sean from the Zeros' son's senior photos last month. And then Jim Parker from Perpetual Change, his daughter Faith's senior photos last month. And that completed all their kids. And, and that's like I said, word of mouth has just been the key, and I think that does come from building relationships too.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Being not, being, I guess likable. I don't know how else you would.
That's
call
a big part of it.
Because that's the thing we're talking about. I made sure to emphasize in my sort of like questionnaire that you sent me, just developing and building relationships. Because I just remember my senior year in JUCO, we took this graduate class, and then it was all about what you need to do for your portfolio and preparing for job interviews. And then they kept saying networking, and I just recoiled instinctively at the concept of networking because it felt so
intimidating.
No, superficial and fake.
Yeah,
you know, and I
like
kind
that
of
doesn't really work.
You know, yeah, it's like I feel, you know, that's another part. It ties into sort of my nature as far as I don't want to push myself or sell. You know, it's, you know, marketing. If it was something I really wanted to do, I did say, hey, I'm here if you want me. Hey, here I am.
Right.
But I feel I don't. It's not my. I'm not. That's not my comfort zone to just get in people's faces about what I do. I mean, if you look at the photos that I post, my watermark is like off in the corner. You know,
Instead of off plastered through the middle of
off
it,
in the corner, like at 30% opacity. It's like you don't. It doesn't. You know, it's sort of that reflects my nature as far as how I do this. And
You know what? Can we take a second and talk about senior photos? Because, you know, as we're all getting older, we're starting to have, you know, buddies and their kids are starting to graduate, right? So I remember back in high school, you would go, it was like some studio in Raytown or whatever, and you sat down and you had like 2 or 3 poses.
Yes.
And you're out.
Mine
right?
too. Yeah.
So my niece and then some of my other buddies who have daughters, some of their pictures have come out. And we're talking like full blown, like 20 outfit costumes, like all these different sceneries, different locations. I'm like, how has that perpetuated? How's that evolved to what we know now as senior pics?
I personally don't know exactly when that transition took place, because I remember when I did my senior photos, it was exactly like you said. I went to the local studio, did the 3 or 4 poses, and that was it.
Yeah.
You know, so by the time, I think it might have been in the 90s, because I remember I knew somebody who had her senior photos taken around 94, and it was the same. You're on, you know, hey, you're on location doing stuff. So, so maybe that was when it started.
Yeah.
But by the time I started taking, you know, senior photos and stuff, I mean, that was already out the gate.
Right.
And so like, you know, lots of let's go to the Nelson and let's go to Loose Park, and it's like,
yeah. It'd be nice to just have it in one spot,
you know,
but man, exactly. This is a terrible story, but it makes me think of it. So there was a photographer down in southeastern Kansas we'll transition here because I want to hear if there was maybe any kind of gaffes you've ever had with any kind of experience taking photos of anybody. But somebody in southeastern Kansas, this photographer had like access to big cats, like lions,
cougars,
tigers.
Wow.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, they were doing senior photos, and one of these cats did not like the girl that they were taking photos with, and so photographers do these kind of gimmicky things sometimes to get people, and obviously nothing like that's ever happened to you. But have you ever had any kind of like situation gone bad on a shoot, live or in a studio?
Situation gone bad. You know,
it could be funny.
That's a great question. I don't want to hear. Not knowing who will hear this, I'm like reluctant to tell the story that's on the
you don't
front
have to
of my
do
mind,
names
because I don't want to name names, but they'll probably figure out who it is if they happen to be listening.
That's all right.
That's all right.
I don't. But yeah, you know, just. I can't think of any that maybe that story.
We'll come back to that one.
Yeah, we can come back to it. I'm like hesitant because an intrepid person will suss out the way you sussed out that I was talking about you in my post last night. Your podcast. Yeah. That was pretty.
I figured you were doing some research.
I wanted to see, you know, what I enjoyed. I listened to the entire Frank Hicks interview. Enjoyed it.
Yep.
And then the Willie Mays Aikens.
That was a good one.
I listened to that. And,
that was one of the most underrated ones that we've had.
Yeah. And because it's what I like to do when I'm editing photos is I'll just put a podcast on and just edit away, you know. And yeah, so it was very, very, very well put together. I was very impressed. And I really enjoyed I really enjoy the stories, you know, how Frank Hicks built what he built up. Because I know him, and you know, and Willie Mays Aikens, I'm just old enough to have been aware of that cast of Royals players in that era, late 70s, early to mid 80s era Royals.
Those guys, I mean, they're all
I
on the
recognize.
walls, you know.
Yes,
you got George there, and you got Dennis Leonard there. There's Willie Mays Aikens on the wall. So yeah, those are our buddies. You know, we're very fortunate to be close with a lot of those guys. And I mean, obviously, don't people usually put you in the same conversation like with Willie Aikens, George Brett, as Brian Rice?
Right, exactly.
Synonymous, right?
Well, you know what was really cool talking about Willie Mays Aikens? I don't know if you had a chance to watch the movie.
I watched the trailer, but I have not watched the movie.
It's actually well worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth watching. I mean, that
Give you a good
guy,
cry.
so talented and what he went through and everything.
Right.
So, you know, I know he was very open with some of his stories that were on the podcast, right? So, he was a pleasure to have come in and talk about networking. That's how this really started. You know, knowing a few Royals from the Royals Fantasy Camp,
right?
Asking them to come on, and then of course they know all the different other players that come on.
Yeah, okay.
So we just we're getting to the end of baseball. Are the Royals still playing? I haven't checked lately. Just jokes. But that will start again. You know, we'll have another run over the winter with some
after
of
the
baseball
season's
guys.
over.
Yeah.
So Brian, as a photographer, you know, a lot of photographers come from kind of a certain place mentally or emotionally when they're shooting. Like, have you or do you kind of photograph from a certain place that you kind of go to spiritually, emotionally, like to get into the zone, or is it just like you just see it, you point and shoot?
I spend the first 10 to 15 minutes mentally flailing because I have to break through this initial kind of a mental freeze. It's a weird thing, and the only way that I always find like those first, it's almost this weird kind of an anxiety thing. Like, oh my, what's this? What's the shutter do? You know, and then that's
just like you got to warm up a little bit.
Exactly, got to warm up. So I just start like, just stand next to this tree or whatever, and then I'll just start shooting, and then just keep shooting, and eventually things start kicking into gear. And I find that oftentimes the best parts of the photo shoot are at the very end because it's sort of like everything is finally clicking, you know. But yeah, typically that first part's always sort of like get tense, but then loosen up and get into it.
It's no different than being like a starting pitcher in baseball. You know, you're warming up, you're getting the nerves out. Everyone has them, right? And or you know, shooting around in basketball. I mean, one of my mentors used to call that, you know, like before public speaking, you just call it energy, and you just have to learn how to harness that energy, right? So it doesn't like completely take over. But man, we're gonna try and get like some funny stories out of you some way.
I will figure it out. I mean, I know okay, I'll just tell the story, and chances are they won't be listening, and if they are, sorry.
Right.
But no, it was this wedding that I was photographing at some point in the past, and we were getting ready to take photos of the bridal party because they were doing because I had an assistant, and we were setting up the lights for it, and then somebody comes out who was like the best friend of the mother of the bride. And she's like checking in, and like she's sort of asserting herself that she's the liaison, and she had a very alpha type of demeanor to her. And then she's like, "So you got the shot list, right?" You know, and sometimes there's a shot list they'll send, and
like of the things that they absolutely want photographed. Is that what you're saying?
It's all the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all the same.
Sure.
You know?
Couples, parents, grandparents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I swear to God, I remember being given the shot list, but I don't remember taking the shot list with me when we met the month, you know, prior to the actual day. And so I dumbly responded no. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, my brain is like racing, like, where is it? Did I leave it? Did I leave it at home? Is it in my car somewhere? What? And this individual, are you serious? And she
freaks out.
She gets livid with me. She is livid. She's not even like the mother of the bride. She's just a friend. She's not even, related to and she's just losing her crap with me. And just, are you? And she's just like goes
like spitting, foaming from the mouth.
And I'm like, totally like I've never really encountered a bridezilla per se, but this is the closest. It wasn't even like related to, Right. And then me and my assistant, who is also a photographer himself, we're just kind of standing there like, and then she's like, well, I can't remember exactly what she said, except that she was just livid and it just her reaction that visceral, angry, just kind of just threw me completely off. And then she's like, well, then fake it. And then she stormed off.
Wow.
And I'm kind of like, but in my mind, it's like, it's all the same stuff that we do, so I'm just confused by that. So yeah, that's the story. I don't necessarily know that it's funny, but it was just like really remarkable that this person, and of course, incidentally, it was kind of a warm day, and she ended up having some kind of heat exhaustion and had to go to the hospital.
Oh my God.
Karma.
So
the opposite of always being cool, like the podcast.
So that's it. And I just like, all right, listen. And I had to give, my assistant, Steve, he kind of a little bit older than me, and a bit more experienced. So he just kind of,
just rode through it.
He helped me he sort of gently kind of helped me right the ship. And then by that point, I had gotten to, I regained my equilibrium.
Your composure,
I'm guessing she wasn't on the shot list.
She does not appear in any of those photos, no.
Man, she might be in the background laid out.
I used to own a photo booth rental company, and, so I did a lot of weddings and did a lot of corporate stuff. A lot of different stuff like you do. Man, and it did not take me long to figure out that I wanted to do fewer weddings than corporate events, because corporate events it is all and somebody's spending somebody else's money, and it's not somebody's most important day of their life.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And that's what weddings, like as a business owner, that was just so stressful. And I grew up in that industry. My mom's a wedding photographer, or has owned a photography business for 40 years, and she transitioned during that digital age. Didn't quite get there as quick as you, which I think was interesting when you're like, it just clicked. You picked up a camera just 20 years ago, basically, and became, so great like you are. Like, that's really, really impressive. But man, these people in weddings. Whew.
It's funny, and maybe it's just
Have you been lucky?
I've been lucky in a lot of ways because it's mostly people I know, and they're and either people I know directly or people's kids. There have been a handful of referrals of people I did not otherwise already know. But in general, it's been pretty, it's always been
some positive
experience. Good. Yeah, it's always been a positive. I'm trying to that's why I struggled to have something to talk about. Like that incident happened, and so, but
have you had the opportunity to shoot some kind of famous people or musicians or anybody that's outside of Kansas City? Or
yeah, I actually posted such a photo a couple of days ago. What's his name? John Humphrey from the band Seether.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you're familiar. Yeah, he's because there's a drum company called WFL 3 Drums.
Okay,
it's William Ludwig III.
Oh,
so it's
not Ludwig. It's a branch of the family.
It's a branch. He's the third generation. And so he's got his lineup of drummers, and so John Humphrey came in, and then we did that shoot, and it was just pretty cool. Pretty straightforward. If you look at the photo closely, you see there's blinds on the window, so it's not the most rock and roll, but the drum kit's there, and I did what I could as far as lighting it, and
that's cool
and stuff. But yeah, so he's one of them. I'm trying to think of any.
But it doesn't matter if it's outside of Kansas City. Like, you shoot everybody, like anybody who's anybody, when they've gotten their photo taken by you, and even people that aren't like the true subject for that day, like because you are at so many events.
Yeah,
like. Chances are you've been photographed. Darren, there's chances that Darren's been at some gala, right, where you've taken a photo.
I've photographed, both of our Kansas City's, Lucas and then Sly James at such events.
Yeah.
Stan Lee.
From
the late Marvel comic. Yep. That was at Comic-Con in 2016. I was backstage and we were waiting for him. And yeah, that's on my website somewhere where there's a group photo of the mayor, Sly James, and 2 other people, and then on stage and behind them is the crowd all cheering. But backstage in the green room, I got a couple photos of Sly James talking to Stan Lee while they were sharing old stories from when they were respectively in the Navy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
That's very cool. So do you have any current projects that you're working on right now that's in the works?
and I'm trying to think what would be relevant, because I think I remember showing you some like commercial real estate and motion graphics.
Yeah, you've been some stop motion
That's-
stuff. So
or
talk
mo-
about that, because we do have some we're real
Yeah.
estate company, right? So go ahead.
Basically just taking, my colleague and friend Patrick McBride, who owns Drone On Demand KC, he does a lot of aerial video stuff. Gotcha. And he's kind of branched out into, we do stuff as far out as Florida. That's the current project that I happen to be working on literally before I came up here. South Dakota, Indiana, Colorado. And basically what I'm doing is I edit the clip. And then there's this, animation that I create, which is a Google or Studio animation where it starts high and you can see the state of Kansas or the state of Florida, zooms into the city, Tampa, zooms into Tampa, and then it zooms into St. Petersburg, and then it zooms into, and each step, that's designed, you see the highways animate in. Right. And then it gets closer, and then call outs of like points of interest in the area.
Landmarks,
right. Landmarks. And that's what that is,
and that's a big thing for commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking on, sites like LoopNet or Crexy or whatever, and you see those badass graphics that are appearing, like you are the guy that does that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's really, really cool, because that's a skill set that's not
It
nobody can just do that.
Well, it's a whole different animal, because
it took a
people don't
commitment.
realize the difference between like residential real estate and commercial.
Yeah.
Right. Massive difference.
Yeah. But it took a lot of time. The first such project that I attempted, just doing it as I just described, was a lot of trial and error, a lot of watching YouTube videos, a lot of tutorials and stuff, and I kept track of how many hours this like 3 or 4 minute video clip with the animation and everything took. It was like close on 100 hours.
Wow. For the first one,
because I was literally, and then quickly got it down to 20 hours. Now it's in the 10 hour. That's kind of the optimal thing, is right 10 to 15 hours to put those projects together. But yeah, that took a lot of work in the beginning, and a lot of self-taught stuff.
I keep hearing you say that, which is a really cool thing. You pretty much self-taught your way through this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I grew up drawing.
Okay.
Just that was sort of,
so always artistic.
That was, I just remember a story, or what I remember, and I know it had to be 1977 because Star Wars had just come out, and that was what it was.
There we go. Darren's a huge Star Wars.
So I was 4 years old.
Yep.
But I just remember, just becoming aware of stuff, and I remember, my mom's on the phone. She sets me down on the table or whatever, and she's sketching while she's on the phone, and she's happened to look at this card, which happened to be a Star Wars card, playing card of some type, collector's card,
Tops,
and I can't remember if she was tracing it or what, but I just remember, and it happened to be the scene where Darth Vader's choking the rebel soldier.
Okay.
Yes.
And what I remember distinctly about that is she's drawing, and he's so, and for some reason she put a smile on the choked rebel soldier's face. I distinctly remember that, and being four, I even at 4 I was kind of confused, by that,
smiling,
But then later, then the haziness of memories goes away. But then either the same day or the night or the next day, it's my dad that's on the phone, and he's talking to somebody. And so then I just kind of reach out, and then I just start drawing on something. And I think it was, had to be like a planet, because I was also Star Trek, the original series was in syndication on and that was my favorite TV show. So they'd always have those planets that look like an orange.
Yes.
And so I did something like that, and I just it was like a shape of a planet, and then continents and then my dad got off the phone, and he noticed that I'd been, it must have been like on some drawing pad that he did, or something that he didn't want me drawing on, because he was about to scold me.
Right.
like, what do you, and then he kind of hesitated and looked at what I did and like saw,
Right.
and he's like,
There was decent.
huh.
Like, oh, that's actually good.
Hey, that's not bad.
So that's how that started.
What I love,
really
what I love
cool.
about that story, besides the Star Wars stuff, is I bet you've either never talked about that or it's been a while since you've talked about that, because I'm sitting here.
I've told it a couple of
Well, I'm
times.
watching you, like the wheels turn as you're
Yeah.
trying to remember these
Yeah.
old memories, and
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
I've told one or two people that story.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Thanks
I
for
love
sharing
I
that.
love the idea that guy had a smile on his face.
That's
Darth
like
Vader's
crystal
choking
clear
about.
to this day. Yeah,
There you go.
crystal
Man.
clear.
Well, so we have some younger listeners. I'm not trying to be funny, but there's some listeners that might not know what the Kansas City Star was. And for some of you, that was a
think it's-
newspaper that used to be delivered to your home.
I think
Okay?
it still exists, as a matter of
It
fact.
still does.
Still
yeah.
does. It still does. So I just remember growing up, that was a big part.
Yeah.
But going back, you were there from 2002 to 2015.
Yep.
Looking back on that, how did that really help your career as far as, your graphic artist and all the things that you do
Well,
up to today?
Kind of tying back into what I was saying about growing up being a drawer and all that. The natural course would be to get into something like graphic design, and I kind of half-heartedly took classes part-time at K-State throughout the 90s, and then kind of gave up going to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I finally decided, I'm closing in I'm like in my 25 at the time or something. And, I just decided I could work retail, all my life and maybe have some kind of success being in retail. And for all the, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, I guess, because I did like working. I worked at, bookstores, Walden Books and Hastings, which is no longer in existence. So I probably would have had to figure something else out anyway.
True story.
But then I decided to commit to getting a degree, and it was in graphic design. But I also realized that I needed to get out of Manhattan. And so when I found out for sure that JUCO, Johnson County Community College, had a graphic design program, I moved to Kansas City in '99 and just got my degree. And so kind of coming back to what you were asking about the Star and how it's helped, really the graphic design stuff, it does, I think, inform the way I take photos, compositionally, and just things, the concept of rule of thirds. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept.
I have a graphic design degree as well.
Okay, yeah, there you go then. So,
Yeah.
and I just apply it to the photography I do, just the way I compose the shots, visual hierarchy and all that good stuff,
Well, I mean, you really are like, we've worked together a couple times. Then I've got photographers that, I tend to work with more just because, relationships or whatever.
Brian Davis,
But yeah, like Brian Davis.
one of my favorite people.
And Brian Davis always says to me, like, I'm really not worthy, Bobby. Like, you need to be working more with Brian.
He's self-deprecating.
Rice.
He's so self-deprecating.
And I know he is, and he's so. But as a full time dentist, right, who does photography as a hobby, he is so great. My point is, when you have the respect of your peers and other people, of not only the subjects that you shoot, but other peers, like that's the best form of, that you're doing something great. And not to mention, and this is going to be a little shameless plug for all of us, is that you right now are nominated for Best Photographer in Kansas City through the Pitch Awards.
Yep, there we go.
I don't know how that happened or why.
We are also nominated
I
in
voted.
several
I voted
categories.
for you.
Yeah,
I
thank
did.
you very much. Summit Lending is up for Best Mortgage Company. Always Be Cool, Best Podcast in Kansas City.
Goosehead.
Yep, Goosehead Insurance that we also own. So we've got a lot going on. But I just wanted to show that is an honor when you've got your peers and other people, within the city that are saying, hey, this is the guy.
All these years, I don't know how long they've been doing the best of stuff. But
Like 20 plus years.
yeah, so, I don't know what it was this year that
Had enough people nominate you.
I
is
don't
what
know.
it
I don't
is.
know how the nominating thing works.
I'm literally writing down vote for Brian
Yeah. Yeah.
after the podcast.
Is there a favorite event that you either happens multiple times or it's been a one-time thing for you or a one-time subject that you just like it's stuck in your craw? Like that was an amazing event or an amazing subject that I don't know will ever be replicated? You just had such a great time.
Oh man, there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff that I can answer. From the Irish Fest every year to Boulevardia.
Which, by the way, we were the official podcast of Boulevardia this year.
Really?
We were,
Yes.
yeah.
I wasn't part of Boulevardia this year, but especially those first couple of years when it was in the West Bottoms. I just love those. Are some of my favorite events that I did.
It's a cool event.
Mm-hmm. It is, but then there was this other event, and I'm trying to remember what it was called. I'm going to slip my hand, get my phone out because I could look it up.
Yep.
But when I would take part of what I got my access, I suppose, working at the Star, I ended up getting sent out to shoot events for Inc. KC. Yeah. Because that's part of the Star. And so a lot of these events that I would cover were always great. And I've almost found it here. Bloom.
That's one of the first events like 10 years ago where it was a black tie event where we saw each other.
Yes. So Bloom. And the theme with Bloom every year, I think the first couple years I covered it, it was on the stage at Starlight Theater.
Oh, nice.
They just block out the front and they would where the stage,
right,
where the bands usually play, they would have all these activities and stuff. And every year they'd have a different theme. So you dress up in a different kind of outfit. Like there was one sort of 70s hippie thing where, you had these girls that had painted on outfits. And
were you taking pictures of that?
They got covered, yes. I didn't neglect them, no. And then, but every year they had a different theme and different types of outfits. I think one year was like everybody's not Captain Nintendo, but more like seafaring outfits. But my favorite was they held it in the West Bottoms. I can't remember the building, but the theme was Speakeasy. Okay. So, and they even, how those buildings are built in that era. They were already, I think in a lot of cases, they were already old by the 20s, but they kind of co-opted this old building and they had all these slat walls set up and everybody's dressed up in 1920s speakeasy. Flappers. And then they staged this like a fake raid, like the police were raiding in the middle of the thing. And it was
some great photo opportunities.
It was it was great. That was a great day. That was April of 2013.
Nice.
So that stands out.
Ago, yeah.
And then the next year they changed it to a different theme. It wasn't quite as fun, know. And then eventually I think they kind of folded. They decided to retire the event by 2018 or so. But that particular year, that event in general was always a great thing to look forward to and participate in. But that particular one, the Speakeasy 20, that was really, really.
That's a hard one to back up. Yeah, exactly. So let's say if someone is listening to this, and whether it's senior photos, weddings, whatever it is, like what's the best way for them to check out some of your work?
BrianRiceCreative.com. That's my main website. I've got like a contact form on there. Email BrianRiceCreative@gmail.com. And then Facebook. I mean, I've got my regular Facebook page, which is just Brian Rice, and then Facebook photo page, Brian Rice Creative, photo and video.
And we'll put all that stuff in the show notes too. So
basically at Brian Rice Creative throughout most of the various
socials.
Yeah.
Brian, before we put a bow on this, we've got a couple rapid fire questions. Darren, you got anything else before I get into the rapid fire?
Hit it. Go
ahead. All right, brother. Here we go, Brian. Who is someone alive or dead that you would love to photograph?
Alive or dead? I don't know why Raquel Welch came up in my brain.
Oh my gosh, she was so fine. She was so smoking hot.
Yeah, maybe.
Like 1976 Raquel Welch.
Oh, I thought you were talking grumpy old men Raquel Welch.
Still then too.
There's a photo of her from 1970, which she's sort of like in Native American garb.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, this is a true story. Allison and I have a 3x4 foot poster of Raquel Welch in our living room because she starred in a roller derby movie called the Kansas City Oh God, Allison's gonna kill me. Kansas City
It's on your wall, Bob.
Warrior or something like that. Anyway, it was a roller derby movie that she starred in.
And called Kansas
Kansas City Bomber, the Kansas City Bomber,
Kansas City Bomber.
Oh, okay.
and it was Raquel Welch.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Look at it. That was unplanned. We got a little tie in there. All right, rapid fire. In one word, how would you describe your photography style? Here's the thing, and I think why this is difficult for you is that like you're
cover a lot of
so
stuff,
unique, right? In that you do cover a lot of stuff, and for so many different styles of subjects that hire you, like for you to be so well versed across different styles and platforms says a lot. So I'll say the word for you. I'll say unique.
Possibly, yeah.
I'll say that.
Yes.
Unique. I'm just thinking of things like. I'm really sorry, everybody, that I'm stumbling on this.
I got you stumped.
I think he's like amazing. He's just humble.
Yeah.
Unique,
And when you're
but-
when you're humble, it's hard to put.
So talk about
But
yourself.
I just think in terms of, I'm trying to articulate what would be sort of just capturing a moment, being in the right place at the right time, and getting the shot that nobody else gets. So I guess maybe unique applies. Maybe that is a good way to put it. Opportunistic, observant.
Yeah, for sure.
Always sort of, I'll have conversations with people at an event while I'm always still watching. So I'm kind of talking, and then all of a sudden, I've been known to cut off somebody to get a shot.
To see a shot. Yeah, for sure. What's been so far the biggest highlight of your career?
Oh man, biggest highlight. I wouldn't call it a highlight, but it was very much remarkable because I went to the Bahamas one in 2013. Colleague of mine named Don Schmidt, who was marketing for, I think, Liberty Mutual, and he was part of the Royals too. He was one of their creative people. When we went out and did this photo shoot, like Liberty Mutual had this big company retreat at the Atlantis in the Bahamas, and they had all their people in from around the country. We went out there for a day and took photos for this project that Don was doing. So we went out there and, flew in on a Tuesday, did the photos on Wednesday, flew back on Thursday. And I had, that like less than 48-hour period of actually being on land in the Bahamas.
Right.
I had all of an hour and a half on the beach, but I remember that well.
Still a fun gig.
But I was, I do. What I remember when you said that is because I just remember at that point, because that's been 10 years on now, I just remember sitting on the beach because it was, I think, because we shot all day Wednesday, and Don goes to bed because he's, married. He's talking to his wife on the phone, and I kind of walking around the grounds, and I get a beer in the casino, and then I walk out onto the beach.
Just at Atlantis?
At the Atlantis. Yeah. And walked out and just kind of sat on the beach, and it was dark by then, but you could still hear the waves, and then you look on the ocean, you could see the frothy white forming and then crashing, and I'm just having a beer, sitting out there staring, just reflecting on like, I had no idea this is what where I would get, whether it's a highlight, it's a favorite moment of mine.
No, that's perfect.
That's a great place.
Yeah.
Were you snapping pictures of people going down those big slides at Atlantis?
Nah. I got a lot of photos of the beach water and stuff, but that particular moment, I just remember reflecting on how
That's awesome.
How cool that was.
That's a great spot.
Very good. Man, yes. Brian, thank you so much for joining the show,
thank
man.
You.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great
so
work, man.
Make sure everybody check him out at brianricecreative.com. Find him on Instagram at brianricecreative. Same thing with Facebook. You can email him too at brianricecreative@gmail.com. Make sure to go to the Pitch Kansas City to vote for Brian Rice for best photographer in Kansas City. It's a pretty cool honor. Make sure you get your votes in for Summit Lending, Goosehead, and Always Be Cool as well. Absolutely. You guys take care. This has been the Always Be Cool podcast with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland, and today's special guest, Brian Rice.
Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe and write a 5-star review of the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Always Be Cool Podcast. Take care and always be cool, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care. Thank you.
If If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, Darren and Bobby thank you from the bottom of their hearts.
They hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave them a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in our community.
Also, feel free to let DC and BK know which business or community leaders you'd like to see covered in future episodes. Get in touch in the comments or on social media. See you next time for a new episode. And remember, always be cool.
This podcast is powered by Summit Lending, NMLS number 1850081, Equal Housing Lender.